It is the big idea. A new world order.
De choix dans l'éventualité de la formation d'un gouvernement mondial. Okay? Comme si on prend des bonhommes comme Bush ou d'autres qu'on considérait comme étant les plus importants au niveau international, ce n'est pas eux qui sont les plus importants, ils sont seulement comme Kissinger, les valets de personnalités qui, elles, sont dans l'ombre. Donc les personnes qui ont le vrai pouvoir, c'est pour ça qu'on l'appelle en premier lieu le pouvoir occulte, c'est que ces personnes-là ne sont pas des personnes de façade, c'est pas eux autres qui sont au premier plan. Et là, on rentre dans le jeu politique de Machiavel, c'est-à-dire que
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a sixth grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
Man is on a quest to play God, to control the weather and use it as a weapon. Lightning, torrential rains, hurricanes, targeted at the enemy.
The ultimate war is if you never have to fire a round and nobody ever knew you launched the fight.
Is it possible there have already been attacks using weather weapons?
Some people believe that Katrina was weather warfare at its most potent.
But how do we get from understanding extreme weather to making it do our bidding?
Earthquake, tidal wave, those become the future of warfare.
This series investigates how the impossible is becoming possible and what it might mean in the future.
One of the significant elements of weather warfare is the plausible deniability angle to it. you can't really attribute it to anyone at all, because you don't know if it's just the weather or if it's some more sinister military application that you're being subjected to.
If you can trigger nature to do the work for you, you can raise covert wars, which our country and many others are famous for, and yet have the deniability that goes along with it.
Weather experts from NOAA and from the National Weather Service can't explain why the jet stream anomaly occurred. Perhaps it's all just a part of Mother Nature's unpredictable ebbs and flows. Still, it's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas in February 1992. They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HARP.
HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
It is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station, but it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It uses unique patented ability to focus the energy coming out of the antenna field and injects that energy into a spot at the very top of the atmosphere in a region called the ionosphere.
HARP is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts. To give you an idea of what that is, the largest legal AM radio station in North America is 50,000 watts. HARP is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
This is where HARP is pointing. It's an area located roughly 300 miles from Anchorage. The U.S. military says HARP is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. But another theory is surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HARP is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
HARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
If you push the ionosphere out into space, then the stratosphere just under the ionosphere has to move to fill in that gap. When it moves, it could pull the jet stream with it, thus rerouting it hundreds of miles, changing the way water moves through our atmosphere.
HARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. The United States owns and operates 3 of them, one in Gakona, Alaska, another in Fairbanks, Alaska, and one in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Russia has one in Vasilursky near Nizhny Novgorod, and the European Union has one near Tromsø in Norway. Working in tandem, these transmitters could potentially alter the weather anywhere in the world, changing the jet stream's course entirely, triggering massive rainstorms or droughts. Even hurricane steering would be possible by heating up the atmosphere and building up high-pressure domes that could deflect or change the course of hurricanes. The U.S. government is firm in its position that HARP is just an atmospheric research facility. But is it more than coincidence that since going online, some experts have reported strange weather anomalies, including massive floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes? HARP went online in 1994, and construction continued until 2007. There are reportedly a total of 5 known ionospheric heaters, including HARP, in the world today. There are possibly 20 other ionospheric heaters in existence all over the world. There is no conclusive proof that any of them are being used as weather weapons, though they do have the ability to manipulate the ionosphere. And that brings us to something else. December 2001. Scientists at NASA's Ames Research Center in Palo Alto, California make a discovery. In studying more than 100 earthquakes with magnitudes of 5.0 or greater, they find that almost all of them are preceded by electrical disturbances in the ionosphere. could there be a connection to HAARP or a facility like it?
To say that HAARP can artificially excite the ionosphere in such a way to cause an earthquake, well, it alarms me.
When HAARP's broadcast array in Gakona, Alaska sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere, the waves get reflected back down and pass through the Earth and ocean. If 3.6 million watts of ELF waves were purposely or accidentally aimed at an already unstable fault line, it could, according to Dr. Agnew, cause a tremendous earthquake. But HAARP's startling potential doesn't end there. Some say it's linked to a strange phenomena occurring in our skies. In recent years, peculiar cloud formations have been appearing in the skies all over the world with increasing frequency.
I think most of us in North America have wondered at these plumes crisscrossing the sky in grid patterns, parallel rows, and the now familiar X's. And many of us have wondered what these trails are.
While highly speculative, some researchers suggest these strange cloud formations are another agent of weather warfare. They first appear to be simply contrails, coming from high-flying jet airplanes. But these trails linger in the sky for many hours, some for even an entire day, forming an artificial cloud. Some researchers refer to them as chemtrails.
Chemtrails are deliberately sprayed by high-flying U.S. Air Force tankers, dispersing chemicals into the atmosphere.
The theory is that chemtrails are being used in conjunction with HAARP. By spraying metal oxides into the air above enemy skies, then directing ELF waves from HAARP to heat those metal oxides, the temperature of the sky is raised to more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, preventing the accumulation of water vapor that would otherwise form clouds and produce rainfall. The ELF waves HAARP produces bounce off the ionosphere and are able to curve around the Earth over the horizon to the ground, making any point on the globe well within reach.
One of the dangers in spreading chemtrails is that it acts as a desiccant and further dries the air. In other words, these chemical particulates can dry up the atmosphere and induce drought.
Today, nations still deny they are weaponizing weather, but there are suggestions to the contrary. This U.S. Air Force report graphically outlines the military's desire to exploit and manipulate the weather for the purposes of war by the year 2025. According to one of the most harrowing lines in this report, quote, "Weather modification is a force multiplier with tremendous power that could be exploited across the full spectrum of war-fighting environments."
The military have had a keen interest in the weather basically since day one. There have been a number of times the military have actually succeeded in developing technology to use the weather.
50 years from now, geophysical manipulation of the planet could be the weapon of war, where it's not bombs and bullets, it's earthquakes, it's tidal waves, manipulation of weather systems. Those become the future of warfare.
العذراء والملاك ميخائيل بالوراء يوم الخميس الموافق 10 ديسمبر 2009، وهو اليوم الأول للظهور في تمام الساعة 12 مساء، واستمر الظهور حتى 2 من صباح اليوم التالي.
You can almost hardly look at it. We've seen them in Mississippi like this, but never like that. Never like
At 8:30 Mountain Standard Time, a caller to the National UFO Reporting Center stated that he had seen the giant triangle and what he thought was a red laser beam shoot out of the craft very near to where Christine had seen the hologram.
The testimony that says that there was a red laser beam, and we want for the explanation that it was a hologram.
Stephen Hawking, astrophysicist and arguably one of the smartest people on the planet, warned us about the possibility of aliens from outer space.
Hawking says that if extraterrestrials visit us, the outcome might be similar to when Columbus landed in America. In other words, it didn't turn out too well for Native Americans.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of it?
I was wrong earlier today because it hadn't happened yet when I said, well, we heard UFOs were going to arrive over major U.S. cities yesterday, but it didn't happen. And I think the fact that you have these military people and others saying when they would arrive, and now they arrive, this is clearly Project Bluebeam, and what Kissinger and Reagan and others talked about, an alien invasion unifying the world. They're definitely balloon testing. They are sending up test balloons to see if they should go with the fake alien invasion.
السر اللي هو أكبر سر بالنسبة لروسيا وأمريكا هي البحوث اللي بيعملوها هم الاثنين في روسيا وفي أمريكا على الجرافيتي فيلد انرجي ومحاولة تطويع هذه القوة الهائلة والاستفادة منها وإن الإنسان يتحكم فيها. طبعا دي حاجة خطيرة جدا، لأن لو تحكمت في هذه القوة هتعمل طلق طائر على طول، هتعمل أي شيء بقى، لأن دي قوة دفع بتوصل إلى 90,000 كيلومتر في الساعة من غير وقود. لكن دي أبحاث على أعلى درجة من السرية، كل مكتم، الصحف ما بتنشرش ولا خبر، بالعكس بيبقى فيه تمويه، لأن الكلام اللي نشرته البرافدا والإزفيستيا عن رواد الفضاء اللي نزلوا مش عارف فين في روسيا وكان شكلهم إيه، وواحد منهم دماغه قد كده، وكل ده كلام فارغ، ده تمويه متعمد عشان تغطية على الأبحاث المستمرة في روسيا عن الجرافيتي فيلد انرجي، وكذلك في أمريكا عن الجرافيتي فيلد انرجي، وده سر مطلق.
Greetings, citizens of Earth. My people have developed technologies which allow us to throw off our physical forms and travel great distances in the blink of an eye. We are in dialogue with your leaders to help the human race survive its infancy, for we believe in you. We are helping your scientists find cures for diseases which afflict your bodies, and helping you to preserve your planet's most precious resources. Many among us wage peace, and one day, with our help, war may be a thing of the past. Our army is 1 billion strong and growing.
Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Defense Minister, General, allow me to introduce myself. My name is François Rousseau. I'm in charge of an informal research group, which does not appear in your organization charts. Our president, to whom I personally and exclusively refer, thought it useful, if not necessary, that I clarify for you a certain number of issues. You think that as initiates you're better informed than most people. Allow me to doubt it. At this very moment, things are taking place. They are somehow serious enough for the informations and documents that I kept for you be revealed to you now. In a word, a manipulative operation unparalleled to this day on a planetary scale is being implemented and will be the final subject of my talk. As regards our era, everything in reality started just before World War II. Hitler had broken certain taboos, such as taking recourse to occultism and secret societies. The Ahnenerbe, a Nazi organization assigned with, among other things, archaeological and anthropological research, found this during an expedition to Afghanistan. This flying object is called Vimana, or Astra, by the Hindus. Moreover, during exploration of the subsoil by the Russians and Chinese in 1927, traces of a very ancient nuclear explosion were detected. Certain sedimentary layers had been atomically vitrified 50,000 years ago. The very same phenomenon can be observed around today's nuclear test sites. One must understand that Hitler, thanks to these discoveries, which he took highly seriously, was going to open a Pandora's box which no government, whether friend or enemy, wished to close afterward. Behind tragic history, which we all know, lies a theory based on the existence of full moons associated with the four geological cycle. According to Hans Oerbiger, founder of the world ice theory, the Earth had undergone 4 semi-global extinctions of life due to the fall of one of these moons. Effectively, as one goes along, the satellite moved closer, gravity changed and triggered some deep mutation of the genetic standard, thereby creating a race of highly intelligent giants measuring approximately between 10 to 13 feet tall. Several tens of thousands years later, the moon crashed, the impact causing a serious rise in sea levels and a nuclear-like global winter. This race of giants was to disappear due to a terrestrial gravity which had grown too powerful and incapacitating for their unusual size. Hitler was initiated to these doctrines, and contacts with Tibet in particular were frequent. The Nazis sought contact with the survivors of ancient civilizations, holders of ancient technologies like the previously described Vimanas. One of these civilizations spread out over the entire planet more than 600 pyramids made of stone, earth, and even iron. These pyramids are almost all pointed in the same direction, all have the same proportion as number pi, and all situated in magnetotelluric nodes. The oldest are in Asia. 2 of them are submerged, one south of Japan at Okinawa, another south of Cuba. These 2 were built about 12,000 years ago. I began by this more archaeological reminder for this reason. Our civilization is the 4th of the cycle which I described previously. Yes, I know that might well hurt our pride. We're neither the first nor the last. One must understand that the study and understanding of several recovered prototypes were the absolute priority to ensure Nazis' domination over the skies. The Allies, in parallel, focused on mastering atom and creating the first nuclear bombs. These secret bases were the center of all research supervised by the Nazis. In one of these bases worked Victor Schauberger, father of the Nazis' UFOs. Schauberger headed the Real Society in charge of anti-gravitational research. He died in 1958 in Texas, while working under protection of the United States on the improvement of his own flying saucers, which have since become American. You will quickly understand that 70% of unexplained aerial phenomena are human in origin and in no way extraterrestrial. Once World War II was over and Nazi technology had been systematically plundered by both Americans and Russians, the first challenge was to carry on and even complete the Nazis' research in great secrecy. The program, called Project Rainbow, especially known for the Philadelphia experiment, was the immediate proof. Mathematician von Neumann, who collaborated with Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla on behalf of the Navy, succeeded in accidentally teleporting a Cannon-class destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge. These photos, supplied by Morris K. Jessup before his suspicious death, are rare testimonies for this unique experiment. In the same time, the first Indo-Aryan technology prototype trials did not go by unnoticed. The military had come up with a more efficient parade than secrecy. At about the same period, Kenneth Arnold, US Air Force pilot and CIA agent, launched the greatest operation in manipulation ever concerning the existence of UFOs. Making people believe they didn't exist was not the right solution and clearly insufficient. Discrediting enemies and frightening the population by systematic misinformation proved far more efficient. UFOs and parahuman belong henceforth to the movies, television, and collective paranoia, and not to the realm of scientists, as it should have been the case. In May 1947, the American Secret Services discovered the existence of an ancient terrestrial UFO secretly recovered by the Russians, which had crashed into the Altai Mountains along their border with Mongolia. Tension between the two blocs immediately rose a serious notch. The discovery was spectacular, and so not to lose face, the Pentagon, in tandem with the CIA, decided to tell lies and imagine a huge bluff to convince both the Russians and the world at large that they too recovered a UFO in Roswell in July 1947. Of course, it wasn't true, but the bluff worked all the same. In February 1949, just after the so-called Roswell incident, a UFO was photographed and filmed in Antarctica. It was the first photo of this type of a cigar-shaped object. Other appearances were then to follow in one another by cyclic waves. At the same moment, the Apollo program, headed by Wernher von Braun, was in full swing. And Dr. Braun in no way favorably welcomed the demand for paranormal experiments, which nevertheless took place during certain Apollo missions. This is the last known experiment on psychic and telepathic amplification, as well as detection of citron particles emitted by the Yogi towards the Apollo capsule. But these tests were all eclipsed by the systematic appearance of unidentified objects around orbital flights and the discovery of traces of civilization on the moon. NASA had to face an avalanche of data and embarrassing proofs. The only solution was to put everything under the cloak of defense secret. In 1971, the Jason Directive set up a special retouching service whose purpose was to erase all signs of civilizations or ruins on the moon, especially in those photos intended for the general public and the press. In June 1965 has appeared this in a satellite report in the area of Deception Islands, south of Argentina. The Russians tried to sabotage the refloating operation in vain, despite the violence of the confrontation. The flying object was finally brought back to Edwards Air Force Base in California. And 10 years later, the first anti-gravitational drone using magnetohydrodynamic propulsion, or MHD, made its debut test flight in the desert around Edwards Air Force Base, where a number of prototypes came into being. The Belgians got a small glimpse of so-called UFOs in 1989 and 1990. The incriminating model was a triangular-shaped Astra TR-3B or XR-7, capable of flying in total silence at more than Mach 10. Now, I would like to speak to you about another concrete application of such technology. The B-2 bomber, whose development started in 1982. The official B-2 stealth bomber, which flew for the first time in 1989, was to serve as cover for another unconventional B-2 to be built in parallel. This top-secret model used, among other things, a plasma creation system, exploiting the airflow like an MHD generator. This system produces ionization of the air around the B-2, thereby suppressing air resistance while ensuring total invisibility for any type of radar. This nuclear bomber has flown for 15 years now at more than Mach 10. It can fly around the Earth in just a few hours without being seen. Naturally, such military research was to give rise to many commercial spin-offs. Over the last 10 years, we've seen the appearance of dozens of non-lethal armaments like E-bombs or electromagnetic bombs, as well as, of course, microwave weapons and powerful lasers. The U.S. Department of Defense, through the multinational Raytheon, decided to invest a gigantic amount of money in an experimental program called HAARP, or High Frequency Activate Auroral Research Program. And it was quite a program. Officially, the base in Alaska studies the ionosphere. In truth, the real possibilities of the installation are enormous. Climate manipulations, deep detection of underground base or deposits, silent and remote destruction of any object, and most important of all, manipulation of human behavior. So, in 1996, a Russian satellite discovered in Antarctica the almost intact wreck of an immense spacecraft, revealed by the melting of the glaciers. The ice samplings indicated a crash date some 24,000 years ago. At the same moment, a volcanic eruption on the Deception Islands, the same islands as before, forced the Russian to request help from the United States, given the urgency and importance of recovery of the vessel. In the end, they suddenly dropped it all and evacuated the zone in panic. The device was finally destroyed by the Russians, extremely upset by the situation, which was no longer working to their advantage. No country will have such opportunity again. And this foolish action, as bad losers on the part of the Russians, was only to reinforce the position of the Americans as regards extraterrestrials. If this account seemed somewhat long despite my efforts to simplify, it was absolutely necessary to get to the subject I mentioned previously. The plot known as the Orion Conspiracy. Our research group is convinced that UFOs constructed by the Americans or the Russians will be used to support an hoax attack on the Earth of extraterrestrial origin. The media taking care of the rest, of course. The reason? Once the threats of international terrorism has dissipated, the war economies of the major powers, with the United States at the head of the pack, will need a new enemy in order to still prosper. War on Earth will be replaced by space war against an enemy from beyond. So then, gentlemen, I thank you. A complete report will be handed to you at the exit. As for me, I'll see you again soon for a second update on a quite different subject. Gentlemen.